Meklit, welcome to Resilient Retail. Can you start off by telling us a little bit about your store, your restaurant, your story, everything? Give us the lowdown.
Yeah, sure, definitely. So this is about my family's restaurant. It's called Rosalind. It's an Ethiopian restaurant in Los Angeles. So my dad opened it in like 1988, and it was the first restaurant on Fairfax, which is now known as Little Ethiopia. The city officially recognized it in 2002, which is really exciting. And so this is a story about how, COVID hit, and also, just like through the years, the neighborhood's been changing, and kind of how we've been now innovating from this small family business and how we're trying to make it a business of the century, more modern, right? In that terms of like getting crafty on social, updating a website, meeting our customers where they are, and educating our customer.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about Ethiopian food, because I'm a foodie and I've tried food from like anything I could possibly try. I'm willing to try it. And I like most of it. But I know a lot of people probably haven't had Ethiopian food. What is Ethiopian food like?
Yeah, sure. So you eat with your hands, which I love. And it's like, so the main thing is called injera. It's this thin bread and it's a little sour. And it's a huge circle, and all the food, like all the stews and vegetables, sit on top of it. And you rip off a piece of injera and you use your hands to kind of scoop it up. And Ethiopian food is actually like really healthy, which is really great. We don't really fry our things. We don't use that much dairy. We have gluten-free injera, lots of vegan options. And a lot of people don't know that about Ethiopian food, which is really great. It's really filling, but it's really like good for you too. And so, yeah.
I love it. It sounds... It kind of reminds me of a little bit of like curry type situation where you're like dipping, but even more of that. There also is a very intimate experience of eating Ethiopian food because it is like your hands and you're involved in it. Mm-hmm. What has it been like watching your family go into entrepreneurship in this way over so many years of change, and so many things have happened between the time they open and now? And like the last year has been, I would guess, probably one of the hardest, but still so many years before that. What has it even that experience been like watching like your own family so personally go through this experience?
Yeah, so first off, Ethiopian food again is, we use shared plates. So you'll be eating with someone and, you'll be eating the same plate. And it's really like intimate. It could be because we have this thing called gorsha, and you'll basically grab a helping of gorsha with the injera. You'll wrap all of like the veggies and meats, and you'll feed it to someone. And it's just like such a fundamental part of all culture. And it's hard to explain to someone else, like, what? They feed me? They put their hands in my mouth? And it's like, no, if you do it properly, no hands are touching your actual mouth. But like, I will literally, like if I walk by the restaurant and I see someone that my family knows, they'll be like, come here, let's give you a gorsha. And you could be like, no, I already ate. And they'll insist, and they'll drag you over there, and they'll literally feed you,
Yeah.
And it's been really amazing. So like, the restaurant opened before I was even born. And like, some of the waiters and the cooks I've known since I was like a little girl. And just seeing this community grow is really incredible. It's like when my dad came in the 70s, there weren't that many Ethiopians and Eritreans. Like Habesha community was really small. And now, on like Sundays after church, obviously, pre-COVID, everyone from LA, OC, Riverside would come, and this would just be like where the community hung out, right?
Yeah.
And so it's a great place, obviously, for Ethiopians to meet, whether it's like your uncles, older people, and their younger people meet there at night for hookah. But also just like people who have either some connection to Ethiopia in some way. I know we had this couple who, was it back in like the 90s? They were in their 20s and they were going for the Peace Corps. So their parents threw them like a going away party because they were going to Ethiopia at our restaurant. My dad talked to them and gave them some tips and stuff. And now that couple, they're like in their 40s and they bring their kids, right? They come with grandma who threw them that party like 20 years ago or 30 years ago. And they have like a connection. And like, I remember seeing them a couple years ago and they were like, we remember you when you were a little girl. And it's just so like crazy to me, right? And all these people are part of like our lives in some way. And even, sorry, I'm going off on a little tangent. You can feel free to edit this. So we have this festival every year, like a block party called, and it represents the Ethiopian New Year, which is in September because we operate on a different calendar. And one time this woman was talking to me briefly and she was just like, yeah, I come every year because it's really like nice and nostalgic. And when she was in her 60s and she was saying that when she was a little girl, she had an Ethiopian exchange student stay with her. And she was like, I always wish I could connect with her, but like, I don't know where I'd find her. She must be like in her 70s somewhere. And I was like, you know what? If anyone knows, it would be my dad because he knows everyone. Let me go introduce you. And within 5 minutes, he was like, oh yeah, I think I have her number here. And they connected and they were like, we can't wait to like eat at the restaurant. And like after 50 years, this connection just happened. And so it's like, there are all these like little stories and moments, people will bring their kids and whatnot, or people will meet and like have meet cute moments there. And it's so like special to be a part of it in some small way. And it's like after like over 30 years, like you have all these kinds of stories, right? Yeah.
I love that so much. Like such deep rooted community. It feels to me like that's kind of the secret sauce of retail is when you can build that community where people are going to come back. They're going to say, oh, this person's going to know, like he's going to know somebody, or like they're going to be able to tell you where to get this, or like you're craving this food. Like you can go here, you can do this. And I know you and I are both kind of in this world of digital marketing and a lot of community building, and all the time, both of us are posting. I know a lot of other people are posting about like, know your customer, build a community, do all this. And your dad and your parents have obviously done this so well without all of that expert knowledge that we're saying, like build a community. Do you think there are real tactics that go behind building that kind of community, or does it really come down to like the person at the helm of the retail who is building those connections in person? Is there a secret sauce to it, or is it just kind of you got it or you don't?
That's a great question. I'm still trying to look for the answer. I think my dad obviously has been in the business for so long, and I think your person at the top kind of sets the culture and for what things will be like. I've generally only worked with like startups and brands that are relatively new, right? So we're like building a community for them. And it's so hard. It's so freaking hard.
Yeah.
And his has been over time, but I think it's also just like, right, like the handwritten notes, like going to talk to your customers and like caring about a story, or you just like start up a conversation, and it's not like intentional, like I don't know where this will lead, but really caring about your customers and wanting to get to know them on that kind of level is really hard to like put in a document and then be like, these are the steps that we should list out. But when you have employees who care about a community, right, who care about people, I think it just comes naturally because you see it more, like people are like more loyal to like the restaurant than it is with like a DTC brand trying to sell, I don't know, some like CPG, right? It's a harder sell to like build that sort of like loyalty and like kind of admiration built in.
Yeah. And that feels to me like the power of having that in-person storefront is you can build that deep relationship without having to have these strict tactics that we always talk about in D2C of like, send this email then, make sure you have a survey here. What is your onboarding process like? Like the power of having a small owned business in retail in an in-person place so that you can have those nuanced conversations that go so much deeper than you can even try to do in digital. I mean, we're all trying to do it now, but having both of them seems like such a powerful thing. So tell us a little bit about the pandemic experience that your family has gone through with this restaurant, because the restaurant business has been hit probably harder than just about any other industry. And it's been harder to pivot, harder to navigate. And it seems like you guys are doing really well. So tell us a little bit about, maybe take us back to the beginning of the pandemic and some ways or things that you guys have learned throughout the last year that have maybe changed the way you do business.
For sure. One thing I do want to touch on is just when you mentioned like that in-person experience, it's really hard to replicate and bring onto digital. And so when I think about like, when someone who's never had Ethiopian food, or even if they've had it like a few times, they still don't know how to order it properly, right? They don't know how to make the plate look really great and how to get a little bit of each portion. When they come to the restaurant, the waiter's there to recommend you, to like ask you about what you like, and you can have that like in-person connection, right, and support. But like during COVID, when you're just ordering takeout and you're looking at like our menu online, you don't have that, and it can be really overwhelming. And our like seeing the word Dora what and Awazi tips, and you're like, what do any of these words mean, right? And that's something that like I had never really thought about, and I think even my family, right, because I also have just been like growing up eating Ethiopian food, right? I never look at the menu when I order. And so making that experience really seamless for your customer, and that's like a big part of that is like copy, right? Like educating your customer with the right kind of copy that clarifies things like what portion size this is, who this fits best for, what this pairs well with, and just kind of like really, and right now we're actually redoing our menu to try to make this as easy as possible. And so if you even like look at our homepage, we have this photo I took, and that's my dad's hand holding it. And it's like a really beautiful spread, but like you would not know how to order that because that's not like, it is now going to be actually one dish that you can just order and be like, I want this. But at the time you'd have to like order 4 different things to make that happen. And so people are like, how do I get this food without without like knowing what any of these things mean or what they'll look like? And it was something that, it just never really occurred to us. So copy has been a really huge push for us. Even like a few months ago, I updated the menu online when we were doing like QR codes and all that. And, one of the small things is like our veggie combo is actually vegan. And we don't like show that enough, right? Because if you're vegan, you walk in, you think, oh, maybe it's just vegetarian. Like, that's not what I can eat. And like our names are really bland. Meat combo 1, meat combo 2, meat combo 3, and our veggie combo. And that's what they've been for over 30 years.
Yeah.
And they worked before, and that was fine. If it's not broken, you don't fix it. And so I just made one small change, and this was, I guess, like last year when we were doing the QR codes, and I changed veggie combo to like vegan goodness. And my dad called me a few months ago and was like, this is like our number 1 seller now. He was like,
wow.
Can we have like cool names for the other ones now? And I was like, yeah, definitely. He's like, come up with good names. Yeah. But it's just like one small change, right? And now people understand it's vegan. Maybe it's more appetizing to you, whatever. And we say, like this pairs well with like this entree, right? And so like there's so much to do. And so like right now, as we're like updating the menu, we're going through this and thinking about all of these things. And, at the start of the pandemic back in like March, when we were like, how long is this going to be? Is this going to be a month? Is this going to be 6 months? When we were starting to think about it, me and my dad started talking, and it was really depressing because I would work from home at the restaurant, right? And it's like empty, and you'd get like one pickup order a day, and like that was not enough to suffice, right? And I started thinking, when COVID, even after COVID leaves, like people are not necessarily going to want to like share plates and like eat with their hands with their friends all the time. And also just like the neighborhood demographic had been changing, right? Like millennials like have a preference on how they like to eat kind of things. And we were looking at brands like Tokaya and Sweet Green and their bowls. And it really got me thinking like, there is no Ethiopian fusion food or even sort of like contemporary twist on Ethiopian food at the moment. You'll see it a lot with like Korean and Indian food nowadays, right? Mexican food. And it's because those immigrants have been here longer than us. And I was thinking at some point, like someone's going to do it. Like, why can't we be the first ones? And if someone does do it, I would prefer them to be Ethiopian, right? Because generally, like a lot of the food that's being innovated in these kind of like immigrant communities is not being done by them, which is really unfortunate. And so we were like, let's start small, right? Because I was thinking already like, oh my God, you could have Ethiopian tacos. You could have like kimchi in there. It could be really awesome. But I was like, need to like baby steps. Let's proof the concept. So we started talking about doing a bowl, right? It doesn't have bread. So it's like, maybe you want like a little less carbs that day, or you want something a little bit lighter because injera can be really filling. So we were trying to figure out exactly what would go into this bowl. First we were like, there has to be injera. And I was like, no, it doesn't. And me and my dad were in the kitchen for like weeks preparing what would taste good. And he was like, I don't like this. And I was like, but I do. So it had to like complement both of our flavors and like bring a little bit of both of us to this. And so we finally came up with the Shiba bowl. And it's like chicken with plantains, with yams, cherry tomatoes. It's over a salad with like our house dressing. It's really great, really filling, but like still kind of like light versus like injera, I think is really great like for like a night out. And it's like, this is something you could have like during lunch, maybe if you're like on the run, or even if you're going to work, versus like you could never order Ethiopian food if you could, but like people didn't if they were like from their office or whatnot, And so just like working on the presentation of that, and then also just like the presentation of like how Ethiopian food can travel better in takeout and all that. And that was a really big process, but it was really great. And we only put it online, and we didn't put it in the menu in the restaurant, and people would come into the restaurant and ask for that and sit down once we started opening up for like patio dining because they'd seen it online and they were really excited about it. And then we were like, this could be bigger, right? We could have like 3 different types of bowls now, and it kind of like helps us get way to the bigger things it could be. And so eventually This is like a long-winded answer to your question. But
it's the best kind of answer. It shouldn't ever be short-winded.
Yeah, let me just talk for the rest of the call.
Please do.
But long story short is once we were finalizing the bowl, we partnered with Off Their Plate, which is this really great nonprofit organization. It's all volunteer run. And they had started during the pandemic to feed frontline workers and communities that were impacted by the pandemic. And like, I can't stress how much their support meant to us because we were able to like stay alive in big part due to them, right? And so all like 100% of their donations go to keeping local restaurants alive and feeding frontline workers. And over like, I think we prepared and delivered over 5,000 meals. And there was that like around 10-month period where we could only do takeout, right? Where we weren't open to any seating. So this was a huge help for us for like the first few months of the pandemic.
Oh man, I mean the pivot of this story is so deep. I think that's what I love about it is we've heard a lot of these, finished good brands going from in person to be able to sell online to do, we talk about this all the time on the show, curbside pickup, local delivery, all of these things. But there is something so challenging about food. And then you add in the cultural aspect of Ethiopian food, where there is this like experience around the food that 2-3 years ago, you and your family may have said, that is a piece of this that we can never lose. That in-person, like community feeding each other, like it's so deeply rooted in the culture. So you are dealing with the pandemic, multiple levels of pivots. So you're pivoting in some level away from the traditional culture. You're pivoting away from the traditional way the restaurant has been run for 30 years. There's so much pivoting happening, not to mention all of a sudden now you got to be able to do curbside pickup and local delivery and partnering with Postmates, like all of these other technological things that have to happen that have before not been a necessity. How did you even start to think about what can we pivot, what can stay, what can't stay? Like just even thinking about this idea of creating the bowl is on its surface feels like a quick pivot towards being friendly to the consumer changing, but it really is like a multi-layer, multi-dimensional pivot that you are doing that is even, I mean, you talked about like arguments with your dad where you have to go into this like emotional state to pivot. I've heard this from a lot of entrepreneurs of trying to figure out what can stay, what can pivot, what can change, what can adapt while maintaining the core of who you are. How do you even start to really make those decisions?
Yeah, it was a long process, right? Because we wanted to keep the food authentic. Like our whole thing was like, we're selling authentic Ethiopian food. We're like showing Angelinos like the best food from Addis, right? And like giving up injera, is that a sacrifice? Are we willing to like, is that selling out? Like that's a core part of Ethiopian food.
Yeah.
But I actually, I thought of it a different way. I was like, Ethiopian food has so many like amazing flavors. And the food is so rich. It's not just injera. Injera is just like what people know about it. But there's cooked. There's like yellow split peas. There's like this chicken stew with berbere. There's like a waze dip, so it's like with beef, and it's all so delicious. And that tastes delicious without injera, And I think there's other stuff we can do with injera. There's a whole future fusion section. Maybe that'll come up in like 5 to 10 years.
Yeah,
But I had actually like, there have been times where like a couple of years ago, I'd like order takeout from Rosalind and I'd be like, oh, I don't need injera. I'm just going to eat it with a fork. And my dad would like look at me funny. But I'd be like, oh, I just want something a little like lighter today. So those thoughts were already there. I was already doing it, but like it wasn't something that like people were ordering. And then I was like, I'd love like, what if we put like lettuce with yellow split peas? Is that weird? How would that taste? And so, we started first exploring different like elements of the Shiba Bowl, and that's what we were sending out to health care workers and to people in our community. And we were getting notes on Instagram being like, I love this. Like, how do I order it? And it wasn't on the menu even yet,
Wow, yeah.
People were getting into it and we're like, does it have yams or does it have cherry tomatoes? Like cherry tomatoes is not really a thing we use that much. We just use regular tomatoes. And I was like, but the aesthetic, Dad, like cherry tomatoes will look great on Instagram.
Yeah, of course.
He was probably so irritated with me because I'm like, you got to think about like the aesthetic, the IG, But like, people want to take pictures of their food. So like the presentation needs to be equally, equally productive. And like, how does it travel well? Like if it looks good when it leaves our restaurant, but does it look good when it gets to their door? And these are things we're still kind of dealing with. Like, how do you pack it in a way where it's not like, a mess when it comes to their home? And so it's a process, and it's like concessions. It's like a dialogue explaining why things will work, and why they wouldn't, and like what you're willing to give up, right? Like I was like, we have to have at least like 4 things on this bowl that are like pure Ethiopian flavors, right? And then we can like mixing in the lettuce, but I was like, maybe instead of like traditional Ethiopian dressing, we would go with something a bit more modern. But yeah, and so it's just a dialogue, and like seeing where your line will go. Like we'd be in the kitchen at the restaurant going through a bunch of different batches. I bring it home and try a bunch like every day. It was a really great process though. And it brought us closer, and like it made us something really exciting for the menu, and made us think about like our future menu and like what that could look like, right? And kind of opened our horizons and pushed us a bit faster.
I love it so much, because it's this combination of clearly listening to actually like multiple things. Clearly listening to the industry trends and changes and things that you're looking at it saying, if we can only stay alive on takeout orders, we got to do something different here, because the way we're doing it is not really conducive to the current climate. And your family being able and willing to change to that is resilience in and of itself. And then also you're listening to your customers, and you tested something and you started testing it, and you're hearing feedback, and you're saying, okay, this is something that they want, not only online, but then in the restaurant as well. And so you're paying attention to all these different factors. And then at the heart of it, and this is my favorite part, is it's coming from this deeply authentic place where you're saying, like, these flavors, the culture, your dad knows the culture. And so between the two of you being able to find this, like, okay, but where's the brand heart, and where's the heart of what we do, and what has to stay, but what can kind of start to adapt and shift around, and what can we paint in maybe a slightly different color, but keep the heart of it. And that to me feels like the equation for the right pivot is, do you know what the industry is doing? Do you know what your customers want? But also, is it true to who you are as a brand? And when you have those 3 things come together, you start to have this magic happen. And now we have to talk about this story that you emailed me right before we started recording, and I love it. You guys had a magical moment that you feel like you've kind of missed out on something, and I think is a fantastic lesson, also a fantastic story. So tell us a little bit about this super magical moment that maybe didn't work out the way you thought it would.
Yeah, sure. Make me relive this, but okay. So last month, John Legend and Chrissy Teigen ordered from our restaurant. John did a really nice in-feed post, and he called us out, and he said, Rosalind's and they had a whole spread, and they did a really nice video, and they showed all the food. But they didn't tag us. Okay. And so this makes me so sad, because they're, combined 40 million followers. I think our family's restaurant has, I think 200 followers right now. Maybe we might be close to 250. And what kills me is right before it happened, I had been putting together, I guess, stickers to put on our takeout boxes. And I was just a cute small sticker that says, thanks for ordering, right? Website, phone number, and our IG. And I'd been really pushing for these stickers, but I also been taking my sweet time designing them, because I'm a perfectionist.
Of course.
And also, again, 200 followers on Instagram. So I'm not oh, we got to do these really quickly, or else, you know.
It didn't feel like a highly pressing kind of all of the things you could possibly do running a small business, something as small as stickers on your takeout box when you're looking at your Instagram followers saying, okay, we have 200 something followers. This is not our main place to market. It makes total sense why this doesn't become top of your priority list.
Thank you. Thank you.
I don't think you did anything wrong here. It's just a good lesson.
Yeah, no, it's an amazing lesson, right? Because I just didn't think it was urgent. And instead of just sending out some plain bland stickers on the takeout, I was like, let me take my sweet time. And here was an opportunity, right? The takeout goes to someone who has a lot of pull, who likes the food, and like without any, one pushing him or asking posts about us. And like if we had the sticker on there, I'm sure they would have tagged us because they like posted such a lovely thing about us, right?
Yeah.
And so it just talks about like missed opportunities and how it's just better to get things out the door quick and done. And then you can like on round 2, you can update it. Like kind of like how you would do it at a startup, right? And that's what we need to do.
Yeah.
We kind of need to treat our business in the same way. But very good lesson that I will never forget.
It's such a good lesson because there's, again, so many layers to it. One, you guys have done such a fantastic job on so many things as far as the basics of SEO and having a great Google listing and a great website, being able to order online and creating products that were really, really catering towards this need of buying and having it take out and still having that Ethiopian experience. And just the fact that John Legend and Chrissy Teigen like chose your restaurant is such a win, regardless of who cares if they tagged you, who cares if they posted it. Like you have got some huge signal there of like all the places they could have gone and all of Los Angeles. They picked the place with 250 followers on Instagram. There's something you were doing that is so special and so real and so authentic that just that conversion right there, you can say like, that's important. And then
Totally.
To have them post after and even mention Rosalind's and, they can't tag you because they didn't know, still another win. And so you're watching it like, this is my family's business. And these like, and now I like hate to do this pun, but like these legends are literally posting about what I've watched my family grow. And then to see it from like that digital marketing view and that social media manager view of like, oh, but I missed the tag and I missed that opportunity. I think there's such a good lesson in that of like, one, trust what you're doing in retail of like, if you are being authentic, if you are truly doing something you believe in, there is good to come. And if it comes, you better be ready to take advantage of every single touch point that could possibly come. So even something as simple as like, is your Instagram handle on your boxes can do a lot more than you think it could, because that one time it happens to be somebody with millions of followers, you're going to probably get that tag. And there's this connection between so much of what we talk about of that long play of like, even though it's not your biggest return on interest, if it does happen, or if like you do everything right and you do get that tag, is it worth it? And it probably would have been worth it. I love how you tell this story too, because it also comes from this place of like, we missed this opportunity, but like, that's okay. It was learning, and I'm going to get these stickers out and I'm not going to probably do this again. I just think it's such a real story that everybody has to be going through. And it's not some story of like a VC funded D2C who's been able to like bring in Pharrell and have him come like a photo shoot at the restaurant. Like it naturally happened. And now you've learned this small, minuscule thing that felt like it was the bottom of priorities is actually the top of my priorities now. And I love the story so much, and I can't stop saying that.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, no, I do too, because honestly, it's such a great lesson at the end of the day. And it's like, we have these brand ambassadors that like unofficial brand ambassadors, I can count them as, right? We didn't even know about. So it's super cool.
Yeah, I love it so much. And again, such a just fun take on like the details can really do so much. And I also like, now you get to go tell people like John Legend's eaten at my family's restaurant.
You better believe I'm going to tell everyone.
Yeah, I think you've won in life. Oh, I love it. So our last question for today, which we ask everybody on this show, and as you've been on this show, I think you know it. You haven't been on the show. You've listened to the show. You and I know each other.
I've listened to this show.
What does resilience mean to you and Rosalind's?
I think resilience, it's all about your outlook, right? How you frame your thoughts and your situations. It's about being able to innovate, adapt, and come back stronger and better than before.
I love it. I love it. And your story represents so much of it on every angle that we've talked about today, from culture to pivots, to social media, to copy on a website versus copy on a menu, to making sure that John Legend can tag you in an Instagram. Wonderful. It's resilience through and through. Meklit, thank you so much for being on Resilient Retail today. This has been such a fun conversation. I cannot wait until I can be in LA and come try your food and hang out with you and your family. It'll be so much fun. So close.
Thank you for having me. I cannot wait for you to come as well and to host you.